Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week here on 1029 The Game and the Coach Sports Network. So glad everybody can join me this evening. Kevin Midgette is on his way. Crazy weather we're having out here in the Northeast and also down there in Florida. But my main man behind the glass, Angel Martinez, is going to pinch hit for a little bit. We have an exciting show for you this evening. We're going to preview the NFC West tonight. But the main thing we're going to talk about is fantasy football. I know it's everybody's obsession. Yes, everybody likes the prop bets and the FanDuels, the DraftKings, all that stuff. But we're going to have Chris Allen coming on this evening, fantasy football guru. I believe he's with Yahoo Sports now, writing on fantasy football with them and doing some production work behind the scenes. So he knows everything fantasy football. So we'll have him joining us at 8:15. Looking forward to him joining us this evening. But first, since I got Angel on, and I know he's an Eagles guy, he doesn't make no bones about it. He doesn't hide it. And like many of my family members who I just was with a lot these past couple weeks, um, they want to talk about the disrespect to their quarterback, Angel. And you think the guy wins a Super Bowl. We had Ray Dittinger on the show, and he said, nothing else matters. The guy wins, okay? But today a list comes out. The NFL executives, it's all over the place, ESPN, it's all over talk radio. And I want to go over this list, and we can say, okay, right, not right. It's the top 10 quarterbacks, according to uh, unnamed course executives and coaches out there and scouts. So it's always fun when it's unnamed. Put your name on it. That's what I always say. And these lists, yes, like Kevin was saying last week, they're kind of irrelevant and this and that, but it's talking fodder until we get to the meat and potatoes of training camp. The Chargers did report on the 12th. Their rookies reported, and the Lions are also coming in. So the Chargers and Lions are getting ready already in training camp. They'll play in the Hall of Fame game July 31st. So I'm just going to go down this list, Angel. Top 10 according to executives. Patrick Mahomes at number one. Do we feel that's justified, not justified? I know he just got his butt kicked in the Super Bowl by the Philadelphia Eagles, looked a little frazzled, but he does have 3 Super Bowl championships and multiple Super Bowl MVPs. He's at one.
He does. And I can't knock him. I mean, I could be the homer and say no, that he shouldn't be up there in first, but he should. You can't take away from, I guess if you had maybe a little bit cheating to it, you probably could. But nonetheless, no, I think Patrick Mahomes still deserves to be in first. I mean, for what he's done with Kansas City, obviously Andy Reid that couldn't get the job done in Philly has been able to do in Kansas City. I think it's still fair to say to keep him number one.
Yeah, and I believe so. And they're saying this is the season of redemption for the Chiefs. We'll see if that's going to come to fruition. I think a lot of things have changed with them. Joe Tooney has gotten traded, obviously, to the Bears. That was huge for the offensive line. And Travis Kelsey's getting old. So we'll see. But, yeah, I believe Patrick Holmes to be number one. Number two is the reigning MVP, Josh Allen, from last season. He had one of those magical years, but came up short once again in the playoffs. Did not get it done against Kansas City. He's at two.
Yeah, I think the same thing for Josh Allen. Well, Lloyd disappeared, so he'll be back hopefully momentarily. But no, the same thing for Josh Allen. I think for Josh Allen, once again, he did come up short. I know there was a lot of talk between him and obviously Jared Goff when they had mentioned that they, he had teased Jared Goff and had told him that he wished he would meet him again during the playoffs. But I think for what he did for Buffalo, fair assessment, I would still keep him number two as well.
Yeah, and Josh Allen, everybody may be recency bias or this that, but he had a tremendous season.
He did.
And when you look at that roster, other than Shakir and Cook's at running back, and he's developing, but they're devoid of weapons. Their tight ends are supposed to be the thing. Kincaid and the other guy coming in, and they just have not gotten it done. So I'm okay with him at number two, and I think he should be top five. Joe Burrow is number three on this list. I think a lot of it has to do with, and we're going to talk about it soon, fantasy football stats. He led the NFL in passing yards. He led them in touchdowns, but they didn't make the playoffs for the second year in a row. The Bengals start 0-3. Joe Burrow justified being at number 3 in the top 5. What are you thinking?
That one, it's kind of tough. You got to figure it out. I mean, what, 2 years in a row since that starts off at 1-4. And I know Joe Burrow is an excellent quarterback. I mean, he definitely puts in his all, especially if you guys have not watched the series on Netflix, Quarterbacks. You can see exactly the kind of tempo, how he feeds off of Jamar Chase. Top 5, I could say Joe Burrow. Third, I think questionable at best. And I know Cincinnati fans are probably going to get upset, but the worth ethic behind it, how much he's put emphasis behind it, I'd probably knock him down to 4. I don't think I'd keep him at 3, but I think at number 4, he'd probably be a little bit, you know what? I'm lying. I would say maybe even 6. So third it's kind of tough because you have Lamar Jackson. No offense to Joe Burrow, but Lamar Jackson worked with a lot too in a banged up offense and defense last season.
Yeah, and we have Kevin Midgette on. If we'll bring him into this conversation. And you hit, it's interesting. You said at number 4, it is Lamar Jackson on this list, according to the executives and coaches. But to me, a 2-time MVP, he's got to supersede Joe Burrow. To me. So Kevin, chime in on this. We're talking about this top 10 list that came out today, and it's the talk of the NFL. Obviously, I brought Angel in because Jalen Hurts, his guy, is at number 9, and we're looking at everybody above him. So Lamar Jackson coming at 4, and that's below Burrow, Allen, Mahomes.
This is such a July 14th thing to do. It is one of those things. It's like, let's see, it's pretty dead right now. Let's put some lists out to get people to talk about. Let's lowball some people, and let's put some other guys a little higher than they should be. Jalen Hurts has the hardware. At the end of the day, he has the hardware. The one that really matters, the ring. Lamar's got the MVPs. Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. At the end of the day, where should Jalen Hurts really be? 5's safe. 5's a good one, but 9, that's way too low.
I agree. When you win and you're holding a trophy and you're Super Bowl MVP, you got to be higher than some of these guys who don't even have a playoff win. So, and we'll go through the rest of them kind of quickly because we have Chris Allen coming on from Yahoo, talking a lot of fantasy football today. Then Kevin and I will jump into the NFC West preview. Glad everybody can join us here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Number 5, Jaden Daniels. Is this way too early for him? Season for the ages in terms of rookie quarterback, but we talked about some of these rookie quarterbacks that flame out after one. Vince Young, Mitchell Trubisky. They did well early on in their career. Is it still too early for Jaden Daniels at number 5 there?
I'll jump in on this one, and I'll say, what about C.J. Stroud last year? Everyone loves C.J. Stroud. You know why? Because I did too, and I drafted him way too early in fantasy. So, yeah, we all fall in love with a guy the first year that he really breaks out. They get more tape on him. They scheme to him a little more. Jaden Daniels, you're going to find out this year what adjustments he has to make and if he can do it on the fly. But that's way too high. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Angel, what do you think about Jaden Daniels? I know he beat the Eagles in the regular season, but the Eagles had his number in that NFC Championship game.
They did, and then they got one over on Detroit as well. But no, there's no way. I don't think Jaden Daniels. I understand he came in as a rookie phenom. I get it. The last year he was at LSU. I know he didn't. He just chose to step away from the bowl because he wanted to save it for obviously the draft, the combine, blah blah blah. And I get it, but I think there was just too much emphasis behind Jaden Daniels, and we'll see like we do every year, the same way with C.J. Stroud. Will he have a sophomore slump? So to put him automatically in the top 10, I think I want to say overrated, maybe just rated.
Understood. And yeah, I'd put him in the top 10, but I can't put him in number 5. A great season, and he's got to do more, and he's going to need to work on protecting himself. He had that bad rib injury, which he kind of overcame. At 6, you had Matthew Stafford. Now, he's 36, going to be 37. Yes, he has a Super Bowl in his pocket. Is he still top 10, and is 6 too high for him, Kevin?
They throw the ball a lot, and that's the one thing that works towards his strengths. Is the fact is, let's be honest, he's a Hall of Famer. Matthew Stafford is going to go into the Hall of Fame. Just look at his numbers. And the Super Bowl just capped it off. But he still hangs numbers. And he's got receivers there. He's got Nakua there. They had a Devontae Adams. Mind you, is he on the back end? Sure. But once again, I'm taking Jalen Hurts over Matthew Stafford. Now, you want to start bringing in the Herbert stuff and everything else, which we'll get to, I'm sure. But it's like, there's no way Stafford's that high.
And you hit the nail on the head in terms of the next quarterback. It's at 7, Justin Herbert. And everybody could talk about Brandon Staley and all the problems he had finishing games, etc. Harbaugh comes in there. He's bought a disciplined style. But Herbert he has no playoff victories. How is he ahead of Jalen Hurts?
There's no way. There's no way. To me, I think it's an absolute joke to put Justin Herbert up there. And what, just because you got your head coach that you guys were looking for, that means to me absolutely nothing. But you can't put Jalen Hurts up there. And it's not to defend Jalen Hurts either. It's as he calls not too much attention from himself, like to come a little bit of disrespect when it comes to him. For what he's been able to do in Philly, turn around, forget about what they did, what happened with Kansas City 2 Super Bowls ago, turn around and win it in great fashion no one saw coming. There's no way that Justin Herbert should be in front of Jalen Hurts. No way. Same with like Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels should not also be in front of Jalen Hurts either.
Oh, we have a texter chiming in. Kinesable 22 is the handle. It says Herbert is better than Hurts. Hurts has far superior team. What do we say to that, Kevin?
Get the hell out of here. Hurts has the better team, mind you. But did he go in and when he lost that first Super Bowl, was he the best player on that field besides a turnover that led to a touchdown? Yes, he was. Then he got back to the Super Bowl again and was the best player on that field for that point. So Jalen Hurts is above Justin. No win ever in a playoff game, Herbert. Mind you, has Herbert was he gutted last year of his receivers? Sure. He had some weapons. They got rid of him. He has McConkey now. They've added some other guys. And I like Justin Herbert. Don't get me wrong. I really do. But at the same time, it's like you got to give credit where credit is due at some point. I don't know if it's for the fact that Herbert is this quintessential what a quarterback should look like guy, and you guys delve into that what you want. But I think he's getting pumped up a lot more than he should at this point in his career.
Yeah, he has that type casting, Cap Rooney out of any given Sunday, that big tall quarterback and all that. Yeah, he looks the far coming out of Oregon and he moves around well, but he's got to win games, particularly in the clutch. And I just can't put him at 7, and especially ahead of Hurts. So, I think he's top 10, but a lot of it is driven by the numbers that he puts up. At number 8, this is a big one. I'll give you guys take before we bring Chris in eventually. Jared Goff. After that playoff performance, they put him at number 8 above Jalen Hurts. I mean, seriously, guys.
Who was it again?
Jared Goff, quarterback for the Detroit Lions.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No. And even though he sells it well, I understand what happened as far as St. Louis. I know there should have been, LA Rams, not St. Louis, the former Rams. But I understand, the whole thing where he felt like he should have gotten a phone call that should have been handled a little bit better. And yes, has he made strides in Detroit? Sure, no one can take it away from him. But again, top 10, Jared Goff, not in my opinion.
Especially after that playoff performance. And then you talk about weapons around him. I mean, that guy has a ton of weapons. So, Kevin, what do you think about Jared Goff?
You hit the nail on the head right there. You talk about a guy who's had weapons, and he's underutilized them, to be honest. He's had 2 really, really good running backs, not just one. He's had plenty of good receivers, tight end, and in that game that he put up in the playoffs, it's like, come on, man. You can't sit there and put him that high with that game that he put up there.
Yeah. And there's a guy, so Hurts is at 9, and obviously you don't agree with that. And then at 10, you have Baker Mayfield at 10. And I think that may be a little disrespectful to him. He had a great season. I think a lot of people are saying, okay, he's on his 4th team. But in Tampa, all he's done is won. They've won a division the last 3 years, and they're favored to win it again this year. So what do we think about Baker at 10? And then we can chime in on Hurts again one more time.
Go ahead, Angel.
Baker, to me, there's no way you keep him at 10. He should be up a little, especially, you got to put him in front of Herbert. No offense, Canes Bowl 22, but he's a lot better than Herbert. You can't keep a number 10 for what he went through as far as Cleveland, which I thought, again, just in my own little opinion here, he should have been the one for Cleveland to finally have to get in that Super Bowl they've been looking for the longest. So to me, at 10, he should be even maybe top 6, but not at 10. He should be in front of, matter of fact, he should even be in front of Jaden Daniels. Again, no offense to Jaden Daniels, still a lot he has overcome to get to where he is, especially what he's done with Tampa Bay.
It's an absolute fact. Baker Mayfield is better than Justin Herbert right now. It's not even an argument at this point. Look at what they've done in their careers. And the fact that Jaden Daniels is ranked that high, that's just for people to talk about. It's got to be. I can't believe there's one person that thinks, oh, yeah, after 1 year, yeah, he's better than these guys. Yeah. No. Baker Mayfield, definitely that's a shot to him being ranked that low.
And we now have Chris Allen on with Lloyd Vance's Insider Football Show here on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Chris Allen is a fantasy football guru, you know. Chris, I got to tip my cap to you, man. I've been following you on Twitter. We've been linked on Twitter for some time, or X, whatever everybody wants to call it, and your content's tremendous. I think you're going to be working with Yahoo this season.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
They're having me back for another season.
Yeah, so fans are definitely can find your content there. We've been talking to kick off the show. I don't know if you've been following this top 10 list that came out today in terms of the quarterbacks. And Angels and Eagles follower, and Kevin and I grew up in the area of Philadelphia, so this Jalen Hurts at 9, and talk about that in the overall list. I mean, and you could talk about it from a fantasy football perspective or whatever, but is this disrespect putting Hurts at 9 behind guys like Jaden Daniels, who just finished rookie season, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff?
I think it is disrespectful, and I don't want to bring down the thunder that is Philadelphia sports fandom. So I won't try and lay into Jalen Hurts and any of his I'd say potential struggles as a quarterback, because I think any problems that most folks might have had with Hurts when he was first coming out, the struggles when he had against pressure, the amount of sacks that he was taking early on in his career, and even the general problems that he had with accuracy. I mean, from a completion percentage over expected standpoint, adjusting completion percentage standpoint, I mean, he wasn't as up there, I mean, relative to some of the other higher end quarterbacks in the league. But I think especially this last year, it was more instructive in the case of, well, can he develop into the quarterback that is worthy of being in the MVP conversation, should be considered on the all-pro scale. Then, of course, one that's capable of piloting a team that, while more run heavy, they did rely quite a bit on Saquon Barkley from the running game, but is he also capable of operating a team that is capable of winning the Super Bowl? And I'd say that he's answered all of those questions this past season. But putting him at 9 behind guys like Jared Goff, where if you were to say to me that quarterbacks are more dependent on their scheme than their own innate talent, then how could you have a guy like Jared Goff who hasn't won a Super Bowl placed ahead of him? That doesn't make any sense to me. Even the argument of a guy like Jaden Daniels being in front of him, while yes, I think from a, let's say, the ability to escape the pocket while also being able to create explosive plays downfield. We saw a lot of those things out of Jalen Hurts in his rookie season, but can he do it again? So I have some general questions about that. Like, while I do think Jaden Daniels showed more arm talent in his first season than Jalen Hurts did, I would say trying to put a rookie quarterback that far up in the rankings is, I think we're getting a little ahead of our skis in that regard. So no, I do agree that the general sentiment that it's what does Jalen Hurts have to do in order to be regarded as one of, I would say, top 6, top 7 quarterbacks. Am I ready to put him in the top 5? I'd say he's probably sitting out just right outside of that for me. So the guys like your Mahomes, your Burrows, at least that's just my personal fandom because I am a Cincinnati guy. But even the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, I mean, I still think he belongs in that general upper echelon of quarterbacks. So like I'd say, put him around like the top 6-ish, but putting him towards the back end of the top 10, I mean, having him as your number 9 quarterback, at least that shows me that from a, at least to me, it sounds like it's more of a stylistic preference that you're looking for. You're looking for one of those prototypical stand in the pocket and deliver and take lots of hits and those types of quarterbacks. But now that's not the way that the league is operating. So for me, it seems like the folks that do that, they're not really looking at the times right now. They're looking at how things are, how the league is adjusting from a passing standpoint, then also how well Hurts has progressed as a quarterback, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, good stuff there from Chris Allen. And we brought him on because he's a fantasy football guru. Everybody's trying to get ready for their draft. I know Kevin, my co-host, he's in 11 leagues.
Don't sell me short.
So,
14.
oh,
14. Don't sell me
14.
short.
There you go, Chris. So go ahead, Kevin. Fire away at Chris. Try to get some inside information here, man.
First of all, Chris, it's great to have you on the show, man. I enjoy your content a lot. The one thing I just want to follow up on what you just said is Jaden Daniels, like with this whole list stuff we talked about, it's like it's just fodder, stuff for people to talk about in the offseason. But it seems like a Chris Sims burner account started this. Jalen Hurts ranked low, and that's what all Chris Sims does. And Jaden Daniels, the one thing he's going to have to lean on right now is the fact that you have Terry McLaurin coming back disgruntled when he comes back. You have Zach Ertz as your older tight end. You have the Eckler situation, and it's how Jaden Daniels is going to react to all this. I think he can do it, to be honest. I think he's that guy. But once again, it's the great unknown. Now, that being said, all right, Chris, give me some good info for fantasy. Let's go.
All right. So for Jaden Daniels specifically, I think one of the areas that I would like to see him progress as a passer is, can he work more across the middle of the field? And now, I'm not to say that because of the shift, like the defensive shift that we've seen over the last like 3-4 years of these too high shells, too deep cover safeties, like things of that nature that limit a lot of the explosives along the perimeter. But with that being said, Jaden Daniels didn't really access that the middle of the field as much. And just looking at the players or the pass catching group that he had in front of him, stylistically, that kind of makes sense. Terry McLaurin primarily works on the outside. And even guys like when it was Olamide Zaccheaus, like trying to catch on like towards the back end of the season, more of your perimeter threat. I mean, of course, we saw some flashes here and there throughout the like from some of the interior guys, like of course Zach Ertz, the guys that can just catch across the middle of the field and fall down afterwards, not get a ton after the catch. So I would like to see from him, and hopefully the pass catching group that he has in front of him for the 2025 season allows him to access some of that. Is can he work across the middle of the field? Can he allow, or at least not rely as much on the explosives? Because we saw something similar from, I'm not saying that they're the exact same arm talent or production wise, but we did see a lot of that from Joe Burrow in his first couple of seasons with the Bengals. And again, going back to me being the Cincinnati guy, but it was explosive after explosive, especially when Jamar Chase became a larger part of the Bengals. And we saw a lot of those explosives going to Terry McLaurin. I mean, shoot, Terry McLaurin caught that big pass and touchdown against my Bengals. What was that, in week 3, week 4 of just this past year? So if we can see that type of evolution from Jaden Daniels, he becomes a more, I'm just going to take like the first, not to say the first sign of pressure, he just takes off, but still not taking that ejector seat or taking that ejector option as often as he did last year, allowing some of his pass catchers to work across the middle of the field and allow them to do some of the work afterwards. Then I think that's where I can see Jaden Daniels remaining in that top 7, top 8 tier that we've seen across this list that's been going across social media. I think he has the talent, don't get me wrong. It's just putting him already up there after the first season. I think I would like to see him continue to evolve as a passer, continue to make some of those explosive plays, not just down the perimeter and not just those deep shots downfield, but across the middle. And so that shows that symbiotic nature between the quarterback and wide receiver that we know has to happen in order for passing games to continue to sustain the level of efficiency that we just saw from Jaden Daniels and the Commanders in 2024.
Yeah, good stuff there. And Jaden Daniels, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes in terms of fantasy football. Now, I had people send in their questions, terms for you. My son sent me one, and my son Braden, he's 16. He wants to know, he's at pick number 2.
Okay.
He Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. He's looking at the second spot. Do you think they'll be available, and are one of them a good option there?
Oh, I'd have to go Jamar Chase. And again, I'll say that Bengals fan, I'll toss my bias to the side, but let's look at it holistically and let's look at it from a process standpoint. I'll assume at the 101 position, it's going to be either Bijan Robinson or Saquon Barkley. One of the running backs is probably going to go first, unless it's a full point PPR league where Jamar Chase might go first. But again, I'm assuming that one of those running backs is going to be going at the 101 spot. So again, let's think about it from a process standpoint. If you want to get a wide receiver in that position, knowing that afterwards, after you wait another, was it like 22-ish picks before it comes back to you, you're going to miss out on what, probably 8, 9-ish like wide receivers, a mix of running backs, a couple of tight ends like Brock Bowers and Trey McBride are likely going to go in the first and second round. So thinking about what's going to come back to you, are you going to be able to get let's say, a wide receiver that is going to have the target share similar to what Jamar Chase was seeing just this past season? Plus 25% target share, air yards in the top 8 across the entire league, and also in a situation that lends itself to being a repeat of last year. I would say that in some cases where we look to wide receiver production, there's this hesitancy to say that it's going to be almost a copy and paste of what we saw the year beforehand. But looking at the Bengals offense, I mean, of course, it's great, at least for me personally, that T. Higgins is still a part of the team. But once they get inside the red zone, their pass rate over expectation, once they get inside the 20s, is still one of the highest in the league. And of course, those deep shots and being able to create after the catch has been a calling card of Jamar Chase since he got into the league. Whereas with Justin Jefferson, we do have some question marks over how J.J. McCarthy is going to operate as the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings in his first full season there. So I'd say between the two, I'm always going to lean the guy that has the stable situation and the better quarterback, because unless I'm mistaken, we're not trying to draft J.J. McCarthy in the first 6 or 7 rounds in fantasy football drafts, but we are drafting Joe Burrow. We are still drafting T. Higgins, and most folks still are looking at Chase Brown as a potential option in the first couple of 2-3 rounds, because he's used not just as a runner in between the tackles, but also as a receiver. So that entire core of the Bengals offense is something that drafters are continually telling us with their wallets, like saying that I value this offense more so than the Vikings, where really it's Justin Jefferson. And really, I mean, yeah, Aaron Jones is still getting drafted in like the middle-ish rounds, but after that, not too much in terms of we're saying that for certain we want pieces and parts of this Minnesota Vikings offense. And that's fair. Having the uncertainty and not wanting to invest a ton of draft capital into those guys is completely fair. Whereas for the Bengals, you can see them continuing to operate from a passing standpoint to keep Jamar Chase towards the top of the league in terms of target volume. Unfortunately, the defense is always going to be an issue, so there are going to be more potentials for shootouts, whereas the Minnesota Vikings, their defense, especially now, I mean, with Brian Flores, what is year 3 for Flores, if I'm remembering correctly, as a defensive coordinator there, and his ability to completely neutralize a lot of quarterbacks will limit the amount of time or the amount of pass attempts that's going to be required for J.J. McCarthy. So I'd say comparing those two, I would look at Jamar Chase as just a better option. Take away the name, take away all the highlights, take away all of that, and just say, I want the wide receiver that I know is going to get more opportunity from an offense, going to be passing more often, and on an offense that's most likely going to be in more shootouts. And to me, that just always lands, in my mind, from that process, it's always going to land me on Jamar Chase being the better option at the 102.
All right. Go ahead, Kev.
A couple wide receivers I've been looking at in the second round. Lad McConkey's been going in the second round pretty much. Jackson Smith-Njigba of Seattle also. These guys are fringe 100 reception guys. The question I have for you, and this is the one that's tweaking me a little bit in my little mock drafts. I mean, I get it. Bowers, McBride, tight end. They're going to go 1 and 2 pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm going to pass on Andrews. I'm going to pass on Kelsey because, I think they're just past their prime a little bit. So you get more towards the back end a little bit. The rookies out of this, Cam Loveland for Chicago, and you have Warren for Indianapolis. Out of those two, which one do you think could break out?
So my problem with Loveland for the Bears is because just the number of other passing options for Caleb Williams. I mean, he's going to have year 2 of Rome Odunze, and I know that a lot of folks are predicting that year 2 breakout for Rome. And of course, I mean, having DJ Moore still being a part of that offense, playing essentially the wide receiver 1, although in my mind, I can see between him and Rome forcing a 1A, 1B type situation. But then afterwards, I mean, they still paid Cole Kmet. He's still going to be a part of that offense. And so unless we can really see a Ben Johnson offense, whereas historically it's been more of a balance between their running and passing rate, it's hard for me to see a scenario where a guy like Loveland can take off and completely take over a potential passing game. Now switch that over to Warren in Indianapolis, where we do have plenty of question marks about the quarterback situation. It's looking like Daniel Jones. And the last time we saw Daniel Jones throwing a pass, he was wearing a Giants uniform, and that situation wasn't all too great. But I would say he provides at least a bit more stability than Anthony Richardson, who has, if you look at any of his completion metrics or passing efficiency metrics across the board, he has been one of the worst in the league. Now I get it. I mean, Richardson came into the league raw. has had the number of starts requisite to really give him a chance to grow. But at the same time, it's if I can get at least some level of competency out of Daniel Jones, where we've seen him make other stars be useful in fantasy beforehand. Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton has popped up, and of course he was throwing past to some dude by the name of Odell Beckham at one point or another. Those are the things that I can at least hang my hat on and say, if there's not a ton of competition for targets, yes, we're still working with Michael Pittman over there, and again, I do think Josh Downs is one of the better wide receiver sleepers for this season. If Loveland's path to getting targets is really just through if Warren's path to targets is really going through those two, where we've seen snap share being an issue for somebody like Josh Downs, and Michael Pittman did have the injuries from last season, at least I can see a scenario where a guy like Warren can have at least a better season. Whereas for a guy like Loveland, it's a little bit harder for me to see, especially given the offensive tendencies for their new head coach and also the number of pass catching options that are currently in Chicago.
Yeah, great stuff there from Chris Allen. He's our fantasy football guru. Glad to have him here on It's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Networks. Check out Chris's stuff on X at Chris Allen FFWX on X. So check that out. And I wanted to ask you, Chris, about running backs, older running backs in particular. There's two of them, Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. Are they going to have, Henry's already had a high level his first season with Baltimore. Is McCaffrey going to have a bounce back with the Niners? So talk about those two backs.
So those guys are the tough ones, at least on paper, because if you look at the age for both of them and also the amount of usage that either of them have had over the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, heck, a lot of folks that were coming into the 2024 season were thinking Christian McCaffrey was going to be one of their best pick. They were excited to see him back on the field. 49ers offense, it was going to be great. And then, of course, week 1 hit. Calf turned into Achilles tendonitis, misses 10 weeks. We only get him for, 4 or 5 afterwards, so on and so forth. But here's the thing especially with Christian McCaffrey, it's not just the fact that so far from a news standpoint, we haven't heard anything to suggest, not going to listen to Kyle Shanahan, but anything outside from the beat reporters to suggest he's had any sort of setback. It's been nothing but no restrictions for him. He's been participating in team activities so far. And then, of course, once we get into training camp season, which is just around the corner, we should get some more information regarding his health status. But it's so far, so good. But looking at his usage over the past couple of seasons, in terms of being used on early downs, in short yardage situations, and also in the red zone, essentially all of the money situations you'd want from a running back. I mean, he's been top 10 in terms of usage, in those situations. That's just as a rusher. And of course, as a receiver, you're hard pressed to find too many other running backs that are going to have the amount of target share that Christian McCaffrey has seen. I mean, he's been around the 15% target share for the past 2 to 3 seasons. And now, of course, with Deebo Samuel not being in the picture, Brandon Ayuk, most likely, I'd be really surprised to see if he's available for week 1, but we won't see him for a couple of weeks. And now all of the news surrounding Jawan Jennings wanting that trade as either trade or a new deal. Who else are they really going to be able to rely on from a passing standpoint? Who else is Brock Purdy going to be looking for across the middle of the field and also down the sideline? So from a usage standpoint, if everything that the 49ers are telling us, they didn't wind up sinking a ton of draft capital into the running back position during the draft, didn't really bring in any free agents. And the one guy that really challenged for the role of Christian McCaffrey last season, Jordan Mason, the only guy that was really used as a pass catcher out of the backfield between him and Isaac Guerrero, they shipped him off to Minnesota. So the team is telling us they believe in Christian McCaffrey. They haven't indicated anything else to us otherwise. So I'm really in on Christian McCaffrey, despite what most folks will look at. 29, 30, almost 30-year-old guy that's had this terrible injury, been bitten by the injury bug. I don't want to have to use him anymore. I'm trying to put all that to the side and look at how he's being used on the field, how the 49ers are likely going to operate this season. And to me, it seems like, especially now, with where he's being drafted around 107, 8, somewhere in there, he should be a pretty solid value for where he's at right now. And especially in PPR leagues, I'd be more than happy to pick him up in the 4-5-ish range as well. And Derrick Henry sits at a different spot in the draft for me in terms of how I value him, just because of how he's used on the field. I mean, he is just a primary rusher, doesn't see as many targets as Christian McCaffrey does. But it's almost like the Jalen Hurts conversation we were having earlier about, because the Ravens are so run centric, once they get inside the 20s, they are really relying on whether it's Lamar Jackson as a thrower or a passer, or of course Derrick Henry to punch it in. We see enough of that volume that Derrick Henry still should be viable as like a top end rusher, especially over the past couple of seasons. So it's the situation and the volume for both of those guys that, while I can see some concerns about them being older, I mean, shoot, Derrick Henry was still rocking like what 5.5 yards per carry just this past season. I mean, still being able to pound the rock as like a 30-plus-year-old runner, I can still see at least one more season with him being at least challenging for the top spot, especially not just from his physical talent, but also from the way that the Ravens have constructed their offense.
Go ahead, Ken.
One of the last things I want to get in there definitely is the fact that we all have our assumptions of how guys we hope how it's going to break with their season and everything. It's the rookie class coming in that we don't know. And some of the ESPN leagues, like Genty's, like ranked in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Hampton, you have Hampton from the Chargers, Harvey from the Broncos, Judkins from the Browns. He's got a whole lot going on right now.
Yeah.
And and the whole thing is you have all these young guys. Give me your top 2 rookies that you would pick this year in fantasy.
Easy one that comes to mind is Emeka Egbuka for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And now, of course, I mentioned that I'm from Cincinnati, so the Ohio State bias is probably also ingrained in me as well. Even though I went to UC, I'm a Bearcat, not a Buckeye. I'll just let you know that right now. But looking at his situation, and that's one of the first things that you want to try and project when looking at rookie talent, or like a rookie from a fantasy standpoint, is there a chance for them to get on the field? Is there a chance for them to continue running routes against actual defenders, and a chance for them to start earning targets within their offense? And for Egbuka, you can see that happening, especially because of the Chris Godwin injury from last year. Now, I know there's still been some discussion about him potentially being available for week 1. But let's say he gets off to a slow start, or let's say he's not even available for week 1. And in an offense that was using three wide receiver sets at one of the highest rates in the league just this past season, I can see a scenario where it's Mike Evans still operating as the primary X receiver. Let's even see if Egbuka works in as the slot or even on the outside as well. Now, I get it. Last year, because of the injuries, Cade Otton was mixing in. Bucky Irving was also mixing in as well. But from a pass catching standpoint, or at least from a wide receiver pass catching standpoint, seeing him as a part of the rotation, seeing him being able to get out there and connect with Baker Mayfield, I can completely see that happening almost from day one. And now the second rookie that I would at least want to take a look at, and now there's all the contract information or the holdouts that are currently going on across the league, kind of has me doubting this particular call, but Trey Harris for the Chargers. I know, Kevin, you had mentioned Ladd McConkey just a bit ago, but I'm also thinking about, like, what is their outside receiver talent going to look like? Because Ladd, I know while he, like, even in college and definitely last year in his rookie campaign, he played both on the interior and outside. But really, for a guy like Justin Herbert, like, he's had guys like Mike Williams and those type of guys, those big-bodied wide receivers that can play in those contested catch situations. And while McConkey can definitely play on the outside, don't get me wrong, it's just having that type of guy that can go up and win the ball at the catch point. That has been a thing for Trey Harrison, like back in college. And now I'm thinking he could play that same role for Justin Herbert now in his rookie season. And Mike Williams just got placed on the PUP, so who could have really seen that coming? But I can't, and also all of the woes with Quentin Johnston as a pass catcher, I can see a fairly quick path for a guy like Trey Harris at the very least to be getting on the field and seeing snaps and running routes. And of course, if it's going to be those bombs downfield that we know Justin Herbert can do because the dude has a howitzer attached to his right arm, I can see a scenario where a guy like Trey Harris is at the very least running routes. And even though it's a Greg Roman offense, so you know they're going to be running the ball more so than they're passing it, I mean, Justin Herbert's still going to get his. So between Ladd McConkey and any of the other ancillary pass catchers around him, I mean, Trey Harris surely, I can see a scenario where he's out there again running routes and getting a few deep shots from Justin Herbert in his first season.
Yeah, good stuff there from Chris Allen, fantasy football guru here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. I got one more for you. Kevin knows my son Nate's always on this show, and he's always talking about Kyler Murray. Where do we see him in terms of fantasy quarterback and where he should be drafted?
I think he's appropriately valued right now because I've seen him around like the QB 9, 10-ish, somewhere in there. And I think that makes sense because he still has the mobility in his bag. I'm hoping after another, like a year removed from the ACL tear, we see a bit more scrambling out of him and also just a general level of comfort within the offense. I mean, given how Drew Petzing was drawing up things for him in his first year back and having Marvin Harrison Jr. in his rookie season as well, it kind of set up for a scenario where things might have gotten off to a slow start. And one of my largest concerns with how Marvin Harrison Jr. was getting used just this last season was just having him out there being this big body guy that play out on the perimeter. And while that works, I mean, just given the archetype of receiver that Harrison Jr. is, I mean, he does have like that large frame, win at the catch point, so on and so forth. But still, if you could actually, and just given the offensive line woes for Arizona, use Marvin Harrison Jr. closer to the line of scrimmage, get him off on screens, slants, drag routes across the middle of the field, allow him to work after the catch. We didn't really see him work like being used like that. And so if there was a way for them to kind of shift the offense a bit so that it allows Harrison Jr. to access a bit more of that athleticism, being able to get the ball in his hands quickly and let him work afterwards versus Kyler Murray doing his thing where he, backs up, tries to take a look, does like a 5, 6, 7, a 7-step drop, has to do a pirouette like around a defender, and then look downfield and just huck it down there for Harrison to try and pick up or make a contested catch. Let's do something where it's a 3 to 5 step drop. He gets the ball out of his hands in less than 2.5 seconds, hits Marvin Harrison in the 10-ish air yard window versus 20 downfield. And then afterwards, it's Harrison Jr. can now use his larger frame. So I guess he was showing some pictures of him getting bulked up a little bit and have him power through defenders versus what he was having to do just this past year. So I think I'm a bit more optimistic this year, especially given how much time that both Kyler and Marvin have had to work over their offseason so that they can get themselves in sync. Then also the rest of the guys around him. Because Kevin, like you were saying earlier, I mean, Trey McBride is still getting drafted in the first couple of rounds, so we're still optimistic about him being one of the top end tight ends that we want. Even guys like going all the way like towards the back, like Michael Wilson, the secondary receiver, he's popped up for a couple of games here and there. Folks are still looking to James Conner. Hopefully he can stay healthy throughout the entirety of the season. So there are parts and pieces of the Cardinals offense that we're still optimistic about price relative. And so with Kyler Murray, I think as long as he gets back to some of the rushing that we've seen from him earlier in his career, which I think he still has access to, and again, because of it was so close or relatively closer to the ACL tear that it might have just taken some time to get a bit more comfortable with it. Afterwards, and after all of that in 2025, I think we can see him like being drafted around that QB 10-ish range, but he has at least the ceiling to get back to like the QB 6, QB 7 if everything breaks right for him.
Go ahead, Kevin. Last one, and then we'll get Chris out of here.
First of all, with Kyler Murray, just for Nate not being here, I have to say Kyler Murray's a bum. I just have to do that every show I have to do it. Sorry, Nate. Just thinking about you, buddy. The one thing, there's certain ones. It's like the ones that caught me by surprise last year. That's the ones like you kind of like your eye in the rear view on. Can Bo Nix do what he did last year? Is Cortland Sutton going to put up points like he did last year? What are they going to do with the running back spot now? Dobbins is there. How healthy is he going to be? And it's like, what are guys like that for you, Chris, that you're like, they surprised you last year, but you're like, let me see, can they do that again?
Well, I think for Bo Nix specifically, because I was more of a Bo Nix doubter, and I apologize to all the Broncos folks that might be listening right now. But the one thing that I did note about Bo Nix's profile is his mobility, right? And for at least for me, I wasn't thinking he'd be able to sustain that level of production from a rushing standpoint over the course of the entire season. But he was top 6, top 7 in terms of scramble rate, and also being able to produce. So it's good to see quarterbacks flash that athletic ability to take off when they can, but you also need to be able to pick up yards. You also need to be able to score touchdowns if at all possible. And Bo Nix was doing that last year. I think he was top 6 in terms of just off of rushing production in terms of fantasy points per game. So moving into second year, I mean, he does have like a pretty solid play caller in Sean Payton. So if it's not going to be some of the short pass, and then deep shot to Marvin Mims or deep shot to Cortland Sutton, I can see a level of evolution coming for that. at least being able to see, like Sean Payton was able to see what he's comfortable with, what concepts he kind of leans on a bit more. And then now, of course, having that extra year in order to develop a bit more of a rapport with all the rest of the guys that are there, I can definitely see a scenario where, especially now with, let's say, a stronger tight end presence and Evan Ingram also being with Denver, it allows it for, you've got your prototypical X receiver and Cortland Sutton running down the field, and we know he can make those tight window throws or tight window receptions. Then also, if you have your explosive guys like Marvin Mims, you also have the guys like Evan Ingram that can work across the middle of the field. And of course, even if it's Jaleel McLaughlin or Audric Estime or whomever, I mean, there are plenty of options out of the backfield, at least allow them to keep a lot of the pressure off of Bo Nix's shoulders. So yes, and on the one hand, it is kind of we'll take as much off your plate, so it's like a training wheels-ish type of offense that keeps him upright and also takes a lot of gives him enough easy buttons to continue to matriculate the ball down the field. But at the same time, Bo Nix showed enough talent, whether it's deep shots, whether it's being able to recognize when he needs to take that ejector button and scramble for a first down. I mean, especially that late season primetime game against the Bengals. I mean, he went throw for throw with Joe Burrow, went throw for throw with like the best passing duo in the league. And it really came down to my team showing up when they needed most in order to at least make a decent shot at trying to get into the playoffs. But if he's capable of showing that in his first year, give Sean Payton an offseason to really work with him and find out what works best for him, I can see Bo Nix still being able to achieve some of the same heights that he did in his rookie season. It might not look the same, but to me, the efficiency and production should still be there in 2025.
Great stuff there from Chris Allen. I mean, he knows it, man. He knows fantasy football. We've all been playing it forever, and hopefully our listeners got some good intel there to help them in their upcoming drafts. Anything else you want to plug, Chris, before let you get out of there?
If anybody listens to what I'm doing here or wants to read more of my work, go ahead and check it out at fantasylife.com. Just did a new site revamp. Of course, all this stuff is coming over at Yahoo as well. But no, appreciate you, Lloyd. Appreciate you, Kevin, for having me on. You guys ever need another guest, don't hesitate to hit me up.
No, we appreciate you. Great knowledge there, and hopefully I'll beat my sons in my fantasy league. They can let me know every year that I don't. So, but thanks for coming on, and I will catch you down the road definitely during the season.
All right, y'all take care. All right.
Good stuff from Chris Allen here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network. I mean, fantasy football guru. I know. Hey, he's an analyst. I mean, he's putting it all out there. He produces content. I saw Kneesable 22. He talks a lot. Yes, he does. He's very knowledgeable, though. But we really appreciate him. And to somebody like Kevin, who's in 14 fantasy football leagues, I mean, he needs that knowledge, man. So, Kevin, there's a couple topics we'll touch on before we get to our NFC West preview. Who, in your opinion, won the offseason? I listed a couple teams out, and I was like, okay, they won and we know how dangerous that can be. You know, you always remember the Eagles' dream team and how that fizzled out, and everybody said, oh, we signed all these free agents, and it just doesn't gel. So is there any team you think won the offseason?
I mean, just being on the spot right now, the one that pops in my head is I think the Chicago Bears added a lot of help. I think they did some things to try to bolster Caleb Williams and get, with Ben Johnson there, trying to get that offense going, some offensive line help. So, yeah, that's the first one that pops in my head.
Yeah, Kevin, that's a good pick. I had that down on my list. And with Matt Eberflus going, it was just a situation where I watched Hard Knocks last year, and I was like, this team is built awful. I mean, I just knew they were going to have a bad season. You wonder why they even brought Eberflus back, and it blew up. He didn't even get to finish the season out. Caleb Williams sacked 68 times, the most in NFL, and they went about fixing that offensive line this offseason, and they had another pretty good draft, in my opinion. I wanted to get your take. One of the biggest news, though, it did involve the Bears this past week. They give Ryan Poles, their general manager, a 5-year extension. His record is 15-34 and hasn't even been to the playoffs, let alone a playoff win. So, I mean, is this guy the luckiest man in the world, or what are the Bears thinking?
He's Chicago Matt Millen. He's one of those guys. He's going to be there a while now, so you better hope he does well. Yeah, they locked somebody up who hasn't proven it, and it's like, all right, the checks are going to be written, so you better hope this guy works out. But yeah, that made no sense to me. Also, but hey, it's not my money. Lock him up, sure.
And yeah, and that's what I say a lot of times. These owners, they spend money, and it's just, hey, you can't fault them. It's their money. And one of the biggest things is I think of Frank Reich. He got fired his first season at Carolina. He's going to get paid guaranteed money all the way through, I think, the end of 2026. So he's going to be collecting a paycheck for a while. And these owners, sometimes like a shiny new toy to them. They're like, oh, I want to play on it, and then they're like, oh, I'm done with it. And then they have to pay the price tag of a coach that they fire. And we're seeing this more and more coaches, you know, getting the Steve Wilkes treatment like he did with the Cardinals, one and done. So it can happen. So that's going to be something to monitor. Ryan Poles, high expectations with the Bears this offseason, and people are kind of saying, okay, maybe the Packers take a step back and they can maybe slide up, get to seventh spot. Do you think that the Bears have a chance to be that team that can kind of sneak in there and get maybe the last spot in the wild card round?
We've touched on this before, my affinity for the USC quarterbacks. That being said, yeah, I think they can. If everything breaks right for them, they should have the schedule working in their advantage this year. They didn't have one of the top, couple records in that division. So with that being said, things break right and, Caleb Williams, the maturation process continues. Yeah, they're that team that could sneak in.
Yeah, I agree with you that they could be an upper comer, and I talked about last week, and if you want to, you can chime in. Not, but the Patriots are my pick to kind of say, okay, they've made some positive changes since last year. They've kind of won the off season. Now they got to make sure Stephon Diggs is all prepared. Who knows what his mess, but they need him to step up offensively, and I think you know. Drake May is really coming along as a young quarterback. This could be, in terms of instead of a second-year slump, it could be the year that he pops. So what do you think about the Patriots kind of moving forward? Do you think they're a team that could compete for that seventh spot or just surprise some teams?
I'm with you. Actually, I did like what I saw of Drake May last year. I think he might have something there. That being said, that division's not easy. It's like the Jets. You kind of don't know what you're going to get. Miami, once again, another enigma right there. But yeah, Buffalo. So it's going to be tough for them. But if things work right, Drake May keeps going. It's Stephon Diggs. That's the thing. What are you getting out of that guy? Is he got more left into the tank, or is he on the Cardi B wagon on the yachts and doesn't care? So I think you're going to know real quickly the answer to that one.
Yeah, and then they have guys like Jalen Polk, and they have a ton of receivers looking for an opportunity. Because somebody's got to step up and not only be a one, but they need number two. You know what I mean? They need somebody to kind of step forward. Their tight ends with Hunter Henry that have played pretty well, but they're going to need somebody to have some bigger numbers in that Patriots offense. But I do think they've made some positive steps, bringing in Mike Vrabel. Elliott Wolf's the de facto general manager, building this team up and getting rid of a lot of those Belichick-type guys left over. So I think the Patriots could take a step forward. A big thing, Kevin, is the two teams that are going to play in a Hall of Fame game. They reported to training camp, so teams are in training camp. So you have the LA Chargers, they're in, and also you're going to have the Detroit Lions. I believe they report in like the next couple days as well. So the Hall of Fame game will be on July 31st. But I wanted to get your take. Hall of Fame ceremonies are going to be that weekend as well. Pretty small class, man. So the inductions will be August 2nd in Canton, Ohio, and it's only going to be Sterling Sharp, Eric Allen, Jared Allen, Antonio Gates. And they're saying it's a small class because they're reevaluating criteria, and they think they let in some guys in the past they probably shouldn't have. Kevin looks like he's nodding his head. But what do you think about this small class? And talk about somebody you think may have been snubbed.
I'll go start with the class. A couple of those guys should have been in my opinion. Eric Allen should have been in my opinion. He should have been in. Sterling Sharp should have been in. Sterling Sharp was an unbelievable wide receiver. I think that's lost on a lot of people. It's because of injuries. His career got cut short. And I think he should have been in. There's no doubt. So I'm glad to see he finally got in, or he's getting in, I should say. Guys that got snubbed, I'm always going to lean on this one. It's the one I'm always going to go to. Let's get Seth Joyner in already. Let's get Seth Joyner in. Let's get the Seth Joyner wagon going. Because that's a guy, you're not going to see a player like that again on the outside doing that.
Yeah, and he played in Green Bay, went to the Super Bowl there, and then he won one in Denver his last season with John Elway. He's played a lot of special teams too at that age, and very underrated coming out of Texas El Paso, and I think he was drafted in the 15th round. There's no more even the 15th round in the draft, and he was a guy that just came up. And when you look at Buddy Ryan's gangrene defense, he was one of the leaders of that group along with Reggie White, and now you have Eric Allen, Reggie White in, but I think definitely he should get some consideration. Clyde Simmons, maybe eventually the guy maybe get some consideration. Um, I know he's not an Eagle, and it's a franchise you don't like, but Roger Craig at running back. You're starting to see some of these other running backs getting these dual threat guys. Well, he was one of the originals. One of the first back to get 1,000. So Roger Craig, should he get in, Kevin?
Absolutely. OG Roger Craig right there. That guy was a menace, man. And he had a fullback in front of him, Rathman, to create more space for him. The high knees going through the end zone. Roger Craig was a problem, man. That guy is so underrated, what he did with that great 49ers team. They're not as great without Roger Craig, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and he's a guy that was just tremendous, and Bill Walsh knew that. Just a great pass catcher. I mean, hands of a receiver, and then he just ran extremely hard. You think about that Super Bowl. Everybody talked about Dan Marino going into that Super Bowl setting, 5,000-yard passing and 48 touchdowns and all the big numbers he put up in his second season. But the Niners just wiped the floor with him, and particularly Roger Craig. If you look at the all-purpose yards in that game for him, I think he may even had 3 touchdowns. Montana obviously gets the MVP because he's Montana, but it could have been Roger Craig.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And like you said, he's just so vastly underrated because you know what? The bigger names got the attention. He got the rings, don't get me wrong. But back then, when you had Marcus Allen getting a lot of attention, you had Eric Dickerson getting a lot of attention, even Kurt Warner back then. I mean, there were names that were ahead of his. He was just considered part of the team. But no, he was a bigger part of the team than we even realized at that point.
Yeah, no, I definitely you would hope to see Roger Craig get his opportunity in the Hall of Fame. I'll even tip my cap to like Marty Schottenheimer. Coach has 200 wins. He should hit it. Dan Reeves, 200 wins. I know they didn't win Super Bowls, but 200 wins, that's a lot of wins. Maybe they should get a sniff for that. And then I'll leave you to it with this one. An Angel knows this one well because we both know our buddy Rich Quinones. He goes over it all the time. Eli Manning in his 2 Super Bowl titles, but losing record. Hall of Famer or not, Kevin?
Absolutely not. No. Did I root for him in those 2 Super Bowls? Probably one of the only times besides playing Dallas I ever rooted for the Giants. Yes, I rooted for them. Did he play great in those Super Bowls? He made some great plays to win those Super Bowls. He's not a Hall of Famer. If you're going to hold it legitimately, not the Hall of Very Good, the Hall of Fame, then no, he's not a Hall of Famer.
All right, there it is from Kevin's mouth. And you know what? Big debate. Angel knows. Rich Quinones and I, and we talk often about that subject. Where does he stand in the pantheon? That losing record, though, is huge. But yes, he did beat Brady twice, and I think with Peyton's brother, and Archie's son, he's going to get in. But then you let him in, then you start talking about Matt Ryan. You talk about Phillip Rivers, all those type of guys. You're opening the floodgates. And I'll give one more. And this one hit close to home, too. You guys know I grew up an Eagles watcher. Randall Cunningham's my guy. You know what I mean? And a lot of fans say he should be in. When you look at the numbers, though, it makes it tough. And I was arguing with one fan, and he was like, Randall's a Hall of Famer. And I was like, I loved him as a player, but I just don't think he's going to get in. What do you think, Kevin?
I still use one of my fantasy football team names as the ultimate weapon, Randall Cunningham's my guy as well. It's where you grew up, man. That was my wonder years of starting to watch football and really processing it and understanding it. I mean, when I first started watching, it was Jaworski, but Randall years is when I really, started to understand what was going on. Randall, though, no. I mean, would have he helped his case if Anderson makes a field goal
There
and
it
they
is.
go and beat the
Yes.
Falcons and he goes and wins the Super Bowl? Would that have helped his case a little more? Yeah, yeah, I think that hurt him a lot. But damn, Randall's close. I'd put Randall in before Donovan. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, and Nate asked me that the other day. He said, "Who's better? And Donovan's got the better numbers. You know what I mean? And he went to the Super Bowl, so I'll say Donovan first. I know, and he never helped us out in terms of. I see Angel making faces. Kevin, he just wasn't a fans guy. You know what I mean? Donovan. He had a tough time with the Philly fans. They can all say it's a dirty 30s fault when they booed him, etc. He always kept that chip.
It never ends with the Randall Donovan debates, does it? It's one of those through the course of time that we are going on talking about our generations of grandkids will talk about who was better, Randall or Donovan. Well, I was there when Donovan broke his ankle and he stayed in the game. And, it's going to go. It's a Philadelphia argument forever.
Yeah, and it always ends with, well, he threw up in the Super Bowl, so forget him. Hey, look, neither of them won the big one, but at least that Eagles team, Big Reds 03 team, 03-04, they got to the dance, but, couldn't get it done against the Patriots. But that would be a debate forever. And it's something, pull up a bar stool in Philly, and they'll always have that discussion. But we'll see, as well as what the hell is Jalen Hurts being ranked, number 9. So there'll always be discussion topics, but we'll have real football to talk about real soon. We talked about the Chargers and the Lions are now in training camp, and we're going to preview the NFC West here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Glad everybody could be here with us this evening. Had some great discussion. We had fantasy football talk earlier with Chris Allen. All right, NFC West. I'll just start with the Arizona Cardinals. I'll start with them since we'll go alphabetical. Finished third last year, 8-9, no playoffs, 3-3 in the division, 3-2 in their last 5. And this team, this division, they beat up on each other. But the thing about them is they scored about 23.5 per game, but they allowed 22.3 per game. So Cardinals, are they going to be better? And, what do you think about the roster overall?
First of all, I want to lead off by saying whoever wins that division is going to go 4-2 in that division. That's going to be the team that wins that division right there because they just go back and forth, back and forth. Also, I want to follow up by saying we all know how Nate loves Kyler Murray. Nate, Lloyd's son, is working a summer job also where my wife works. They're both working tonight. My wife, I tell her, I was like, tell Nate something for me. She's like, what? I don't know. She's like, text it to me. So I texted what I want her to tell Nate. She walks up to Nate, and I told her, make sure you say it correctly. She walks up to your son, Nate, and goes, Kyler Murray's a bum. Out of nowhere. Apparently he was shocked, and he called me a hater. But yeah, Arizona, I just don't think they got it, man. I'm not even saying it to beat up on Kyler Murray at this point. I just don't think they have what it takes to get by in that division.
Yeah, the over-under for them is 8.5 wins. And it just shows you that Vegas is kind of saying, okay, too inconsistent. We talked about coaches on a hot seat a couple weeks ago. Jonathan Gannon firmly on the hot seat. They're going to play 5 teams that are in the playoffs, which is not a lot. The schedule can kind of shake out for them. Their byes week 8. But, when the games I want to see are, okay, week 13 at Tampa Bay. How do they do there? They host the Rams in 14. 15, they're at Houston. And then the end of season, week 17 at Cincinnati, and then at the Rams to close it out in 18. So I think that's probably right around the number. I'd say they go under that. I'd say they go 8 wins again, and I think Jonathan Gannon may be on a hot seat and in trouble with the Bidwell family. Next, we'll talk about the Seattle Seahawks. They have Clint Kubiak coming at the offensive coordinator position, Mike McDonald Started out last year 10-7 team. They just missed the playoffs. Um, Another one, 4-2 in the division, 3-2 their last couple games. So, uh, and they're almost exactly the same in terms of 22 points per game scored and 21.6 allowed. So, 8.5 win total for them as well. What are we thinking when we think Seattle? A lot of people are saying, okay, I want to see what Darnold can do. No Geno Smith. What are we thinking about Seattle?
I think they're another one. They're like right. They're good enough not to be bad, but they're not bad enough. They're bad enough to not be good. Like the one thing is Walker can't stay healthy as running back. He seems to always get banged up. And the thing is, I like Charbonnet as their backup running back. I'd like to see that guy get more touches in a regular role, maybe on another team. I just don't think they know what their identity is. They have some wide receivers. They have a little bit of talent. They just don't have enough.
Yeah, and Kevin, we should have asked Chris Allen this. Cooper Cup, does he have anything left? Um, they're going to need him to step up. Now, obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I really am high on this young guy, and they do have Walker, as you talk about, and Charbonnet. Um, but can Cup revitalize his career with Seattle?
If you're lucky, you get 1 year out of him. I think it all depends where his head's at when going to another team. Some guys take it as a chance to like, all right, I can get back to where I was. Where other guys are like, I'm getting one last check and I'm getting out of here. So,
Yeah,
and it also depends on your quarterback and how he gets Cup involved, and there's a lot of things going on. But it's another situation we'll know early.
yeah, we will. And they're bringing over DeMarcus Lawrence from the Cowboys, as well as Ernest Jones, the fourth and middle linebacker from Tennessee. So they're trying to fix this defense. They just allow too many points, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do it against a team like the Rams. Seattle faces 7 teams that made the playoffs last year. Big marquee game in week 9. They are at Washington. I want to see that one. And then the 2 key games are obviously going to be week 11 at the Rams and week 16 they host the Rams. So Seattle, I will say they'll get the 9. So yeah, they'll beat that 8.5. Take it for what you will. Now the Rams, they've been the cream of the crop of this division recently. They 10-7 as well. They made the playoffs on the tiebreaker. They beat Minnesota. Don't forget that in the playoffs. 27-9. They beat Minnesota. Everybody blames it on Darnold. And they gave the Eagles a tough game in the snow. They lose 28-22. But Les Snead, the general manager there, Sean McVay have accounted for themselves well. Does Stafford have anything left? And what are we thinking about Rams here?
The Rams actually, if you look at it in a couple different ways, they should have beat the Eagles that game. They had their opportunities, they just couldn't do it. Yeah, Stafford has a little more left. I think he's one of those guys. He's going to hang some numbers for another year or two, maybe 3 years. And he has enough weapons there as well. Because you got Nakua there, you got Devontae Adams, who I think we can all agree is on the backside as well at this point, but also Kyron Williams. I mean, they got some stuff they can do. So I think the Rams are the team to beat in that division, to be honest.
Yeah, and I would agree with you that the Rams are the cream of the crop as long as Stafford can stay healthy, 36-37. But they have Nakua and they have Adams who throw the football to that, and then Kyron Williams is very underrated. A lot of people forget about him. He scored a ton of touchdowns. So you talk about fantasy wise, I think he's going to have another big season. Tyler Higbee, when he got injured last year, that offense kind of sputtered. So they like to use him moving out in space. Him and Colby Parkinson, they're like a big wide receiver that they use at the tight end position. So interesting team there. The only thing is defensively, they allowed more points than they scored. So they allowed 22.7. They only scored 21.6 per games. They do have Jared Verse, obviously the rookie of the year, and a bunch of group that they're building on there. I think with them, a lot of marquee games. They have 5 opponents that made the playoffs. They're going to play in London week 7 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that's on October 19th. A big one week 6 at Baltimore. Their byes week 8. And then Tampa week 12. I want to see that game. Detroit They host week 15, at Seattle week 16, at Atlanta week 17, and then they finish with Arizona. So anything else on the Rams before we jump over to your beloved Niners?
Like we talked about beforehand, I think it's just a battle of attrition with these teams. They're all very similar. They all no one really leaps off the page, and no one really falls off it at the same time. They're all. It's going to be very health dependent who advances in that division and who doesn't. And leading into that is a team that's had a lot of injuries lately, and that's been the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and Kevin and Niners last year 6-11, no playoffs obviously, 1-5 in the division, 1-4 in their last 5 games, and you know their win total though is 10.5. So Vegas is believing in these guys. The big thing is they're bringing Robert Salah back to coach the defense, help that group that allowed 25.6 points per game. That's over 400 points they allow, which is one of the worst in the NFL. Obviously, when we talk to Chris Allen, Brock Purdy, is he going to live up to that extension? And then Christian McCaffrey, is he going to be healthy? So what are you thinking about the Niners in terms of their offense?
I think they're missing a lot of stuff. I mean, I think about it. You got chunky Debo Samuel out of there. You got Ayuk, who's coming off an injury. You have Jennings, who's disgruntled. Was it Pearsall you have in there? And then the array of running backs that they always seem to circle through. They always seem to find a good one though. I'll give them that. They can always get a running back in there. But I mean, Purdy's already locked up now. I think they're going to do with what they got, but I mean, I'm not 10.5 wins. I'd bet the under, but that's just me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. There are a lot of question marks with them, in particularly defensively. Nick Bosa has a big contract. Is he going to live up to it? He's always injured. Fred Warner is one of the highest paid linebackers. Is he going to live up to it? And then this is almost a thing. Trenton Williams, one of the highest paid linemen. Is he going to live up to it? So a lot of expectations of that team, but I'm just not sure. 10.5 seems to be a lot for them. The Niners, it's interesting, though. They get that last place schedule, so they only face 4 teams that made the playoffs, 2 of which are the Rams. So the big ones are at week 8, they're at Houston. They have the Rams week 10. Their bye's late, week 14. And then they finish with Chicago, and you have Seattle. So a lot of interesting games for the Niners, but I don't think they've reached that 10.5. Another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network. So glad everybody could join with us. We had some great debate on Jalen Hurts, and then we had Chris Allen on. Check his stuff out on Yahoo in terms of fantasy football. And then we did our NFC West preview. Another great job by Angel behind the glass and Kevin. So we appreciate everybody listening, and we will talk to you more next week where we'll talk more training camp, and then we'll have another divisional preview. So thanks for joining us.